Hello, and welcome to the Family Reunion podcast by First Church DeLand. Today I'm excited to hear from Will Cobb about his recent mission trip to Peru. Will, for those who don't know him, is finishing his Bachelor of Science in Christian Ministries this year, while also serving as our custodian. We'll be talking about his background before we dive into his experiences in Peru and what those taught him about himself, the world, and his relationship with God. Before we begin, I'd like to warn folks that we've had some difficulties with our microphone setup in this interview. We plan to have the issue resolved in time for our next episode. Thank you for your patience and enjoy the show. All right, well, welcome. How are you this afternoon?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
So today we were going to talk a little bit about your trip to Peru and your experiences doing missionary work there. But before we get started on that, I'd like to talk a little bit about yourself. How did you come to be part of our church here at First Church DeLand?
Yeah, no problem. I have been coming here for about almost 3.5 years, I think now, which would happen. I was in school for welding originally,
Okay.
just recently graduated welding school, was getting into my field, so to speak. I wasn't attending church at that time in my life. I justified it by saying I was busy in school and I was working and I just didn't have time for church. But in reality, I just had a falling out at that time in my life,
Mhm.
and I wasn't attending a church for 3 years. I didn't have that fellowship in my life, and in that period, I definitely saw a change in myself, and I was able to kind of see that this is not a direction that I was wanting to go in, and I know I needed to have fellowship with my peers again. That was something I really lacked in my life in that time.
You could feel yourself kind of going sideways and things not working the way they should work.
Yeah, it's one of those weird gut feelings that, like just something's off. I can't put my finger on it, but I need to make a course correction somewhere.
And so, how did you find us?
Google. Long
Nice.
story short, this is going to sound really corny, but I had no other idea. But I remembered in high school, I had a few people, I wouldn't even call them friends. I just knew them. And they were decent enough people, and they would talk about their Methodist youth group and Methodist church and uh, everything like that. And now that's as good as place to start as any. I mean, that's my philosophy is just pick a direction and go. And if you need to make a course correction, you can. But
Much easier to make a course correction than to start.
yeah.
So, cool.
And I Googled young adult programs and was just looking through all the different churches in the area that offered a young adults program. And this was one of the few churches in our area that did. And that's how I originally started coming here, was because of the young adult program.
Nice. Nice. And you were just out of welding school at that point?
Yes. So I've been in and out of school ever since high school. So I did dual enrollment my senior year. I just did 1 year of that afterwards.
High school was here locally?
Yes, University High School. I went to University High School, graduated 2016.
Okay.
Up until that point in my life, I was pretty dead set on being in the military, wanting to go out. I wanted to do something larger than myself and be a part of something. And I was like, that was it. And that was my heart and mind was dead set on doing that. And then turns out you can't, because I have a certain eye condition that was automatically disqualifying. So my plans got routed pretty quickly at that point.
That must have been a traumatic and trying time.
Not so traumatic. I mean, I was like, well, that sucks. But I wasn't.
Wow.
I didn't cry or lose any sleep over it. I was like, well, I need to make a new decision at some point.
Right.
So I was in and out of school. I thought I would do law enforcement,
and
I was a youth leader at a different church at the time.
Okay.
And then I had a conflict of, well, I can't probably do law enforcement and serve in the church at the same time. In my mind, now I know you probably very well could. At that point, I'm like, that was inconceivable. You have to choose one or the other. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And that was a conflict of interest for me, and I had a real gut check, and I'm like, I would rather stay in the church. I'd rather work at a church and do something church related.
Mm-hmm.
So I abandoned civil service quite quickly and was again in and out of school, dropped out of community college twice.
Mm-hmm.
And then I felt I had the calling to go into ministry. And I was like, this is it. I've had it confirmed. This is fantastic. I'll go to Southeastern University, stay on campus. Fantastic. Got in, one semester in, couldn't afford it after one semester, couldn't obtain any more loans.
Gotcha.
And then promptly left campus because I could no longer afford it at all my accounts and all my academic criteria frozen. I just couldn't access transcripts, couldn't stay on campus, nothing.
Gotcha.
So I was like, well, this sucks. I need to do something with my life. And then I jumped into welding school. And then XYZ led me to here.
So you got your welding degree and you got an AA with that?
AS, actually, Associate of Science in Welding Technology.
Okay, very cool.
For all that's worth.
Well, but then that led you to here.
In a very roundabout way. My welding degree from an offhand trade school got me into another Christian college and their adult education completion program that I'm currently in, which demands, one of the requirements is having a AAAS degree.
And so you were set up for that then?
Yes, I believe that was very much a God thing, which it has to be him because it makes no other sense how a welding degree gets you into a Christian school.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. And so you're still in the program right now?
Yes, I'm in my last year, halfway through the semester currently.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I cannot wait. But I've been in it for about 2 years right now, almost 2.5 years.
Very cool. So you started that after you came to church here for a little bit, and then did anybody in the church here kind of guide you towards that choice?
Mark encouraged me. I really didn't have any ambition of going back to school. I kind of thought I just misheard God in my earlier stage of life. When I was 21, I just thought I was all gumption and no proof in the pudding, so to speak. And I was like, oh, I just misheard him. I'll just go do something else. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mark encouraged me to get back into school, and that's where I did. After his encouragement, I enrolled shortly after at the beginning of the semester.
Very cool. Very cool. And that program led you to probably where we're going to go in this conversation here. But what are you currently studying?
So my degree technically is in a Bachelor of Science in Christian Ministry, which is a super broad and vague umbrella of jack of all, master of none.
Mm-hmm.
You take a youth ministry class, you take a sermon ministry prep class, leadership courses. You dabble in a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the class that I was most excited for, and I'll tie that in here to our main podcast, was our mission class. We had a class solely dedicated to missions, how to do missions, the logistics, the theology, the purpose behind mission work. And that was about one of the few times I was ever excited to be in school. And that's even in our book, they're like, if this is something that excites you, this is probably where you need to be at. And just the real need for missions. And that's something I didn't realize, is just how much mission work is involved in the Bible. And that class really kind of opened my eyes to that, of just how even in the Old Testament, New Testament, every part of the Bible is mission focused.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about it from the Old Testament perspective.
Yeah, so that's a great idea, is that so you see the Israelites having in their area, and they're told to be the light in the world into other areas. And we see that even in the midst of their slavery, God was projected as himself. Like the Egyptian gods and pantheon there was overthrown, and it was very well established that our God is capital G, the only one.
Right.
And
but then also whenever the Babylonian captivity as well, the Israelites were told to live, marry, have a life, and be a part of the community, still be separate and kept isolated, holy, sacred, apart. But to be out in the community as well, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, just the nation of Israel in the Old Testament is in itself a huge mission work. They're supposed to be a light unto the world. They are in the world, supposed to be proclaiming the one true God. And then we have that, and then you have Jesus, who's on a literal mission trip from heaven, demonstrating that. And then you have the Great Commission that we all know. So, I mean, God is a mission-focused God in every aspect. And that was not something that I kind of realized until this class, and I was like, this has to be a way bigger part of my life.
So I've talked to you at other points in time, and it's kind of interesting to counterpose this conversation about your missions class versus you talking about your church administration class, which when you were talking about it's a very useful class, and you were finding some stuff in it.
Yeah, it's dry as dirt, but it has come in handy so often.
But the passion that you naturally have for this mission, the mission field, is very evident. So I take it was the class that got you interested in, or just in general being a part of this theology degree, got you interested in the mission field. How did you find yourself going to Peru?
That was introduced to me. I was not something I was going out of my way to find. I was just working here, just cleaning, and I had Mark and Shane actually approach me after a staff meeting, and they're like, one of our other employees, Joyce, who's our choir director, was planning on going on a mission trip and talking about it. And they were trying to see if that's something I can be a part of, get connected. And it's the middle of summer, so things are kind of slowing down. I'm not taking any classes. It'd be a great time to get some boots on the ground, stretch your legs out, see if this is something really meant to fit.
So, the experimental approach.
Yeah. Like you really have the idea of wanting to do it. Now let's actually internship. Let's see if this is actually a good fit.
Okay.
So talked with Joyce and was able to get on board with her church, was Glenwood Presbytery Church.
Okay.
And was with her. Unfortunately, through outside circumstances, Joyce could not make it, but through her and her willingness to get me connected to her previous church, I was able to be going on to Peru.
Very cool. So, what's the approximate duration of your mission trip that you went on? And what time of year was this?
So we were in the middle of July. I could pull it up, but middle of July, and it was about, in total, including travel, 9 days.
9 days. So probably about 5 days on the field.
So funny story about that. We had to cut and we can get into that once we break down the story a little bit more, but there were some outside circumstances of civil unrest and protesting in the country that kind of unfortunately shortened our time in parts of Peru down to, we had to take knock off an extra day because of civil unrest and scheduled protesting, and the roads were going to be closed off, and it was going to be a hassle travel.
Right.
So we had to make sure we got back into the capital near the airport when the protesting began.
Gotcha. So it's cut a little bit short. So about 4 days on the ground?
Yeah. So about 3 days in Lima, the capital, and about three and a half in the compound that we were at, which was up in the mountains, called Yungay was the city. Or it's more like a DeLand.
Okay.
Smaller, but there's a plaza, there's a downtown, it's not complete backwoods. There's infrastructure.
There's infrastructure in place.
Yeah.
And so what was sort of the mission of the mission?
So the mission was, our ultimate goal was to be in the community. We were going to what they called a boys' home, and I was not aware of that. Going to Peru and everything leading up to it, I was told it was going to be an orphanage. We're going to go to an orphanage. We're going to work there. We're going to provide a VBS program and do some light labor work around the compound. I was like, that's fantastic. And my only real interaction with orphanages was anything through TV and movies. Like I've never been to an orphanage. I've never seen an orphanage. I just have an idea of what an orphanage is.
Yeah.
In theory, I have any idea. The reality of it was unfortunately quite starker and more dark than that, and I can go into it. So, though it technically is an orphanage, they call it a boys' home. And
Okay.
a epidemic and problem in Peru is that for whatever reason, and there's a multitude of reasons, sometimes families get too big and they just kind of cannot financially support the entire family. Sometimes there's a new parental figure, and the new parental figure doesn't like the old kids and want his own kids.
Right.
Sometimes the parents are just degenerates and just don't love their kids. I mean, the
Right.
multitudes of reasons, but the bottom line is one, if not more, of the kids have to go. And who do you let go? Do you let go of your daughter and you throw your daughter out into the street?
Right.
And the line of thinking so often was, well, if you send a boy out, he will be able to take care of himself. He will be able to probably find a job easier. He won't be taken advantage of as much as a girl would be. And there's all these societal gender ideas of that. And the unfortunate reality is everything and more happens to the boys.
And what age are you talking about for these boys?
And that can also vary from infancy to teenage years. I mean, the barometer is throw a dart on the dartboard and it can be any age. For example, one of the kids in the compound, Alfredo,
Mhm.
he was found as a toddler, or if not younger, in a trash can, in a dumpster, essentially. And he was rescued from that,
Wow.
and then he had a foster home for a little bit, and then that family, through circumstances, couldn't, but they brought Alfredo to this home where he could be provided for.
So he's been there for quite a while.
Yes, he's been there for a while. There was two kids that were 10, and I
Mhm.
think the oldest was 13.
Okay.
So, and they've been there for a couple of years. These are not just, they just got in there yesterday. They've been here for years. So you can imagine they were even younger when they were abandoned.
That's heart-wrenching. The idea that a 5-year-old boy on the streets could defend himself or protect himself against what's going to happen to him is bizarre, but clearly not the case. And you probably ran into examples of just that, right?
Yeah, it's a just a again, this is not a concept I think we have, at least here in America. I'm sure it goes on. I don't want to dare say that like we don't have that problem. It's just not so apparent. It's not so much in our face I would say
Right.
currently. And that is, it's just such a weird and wild concept of just, you have a bunch of kids and they're considered even lower than orphans because they have to steal, they have to prostitute themselves to survive.
Right.
And in a society, think of them as the worst than the worst. I mean, they're treated as such.
Essentially the modern day lepers.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that the authorities don't have much love for them either. They can't go to the police and say that I'm being abused or.
The police are perpetuating the abuse. They're also the abusers. If not, there's a few of them. The director of this whole program, who started the boys' home, and there's multiple boys' homes in Peru now through this gentleman. He wrote a book, and there are instances and cases of the police brutalizing these street boys to the point where they die.
Oh.
And
So they know not to go to authorities.
you would avoid them at all costs because they are not your friends. They're not going to help you. And that's a generalization. I'm sure
Right,
there
of
are
course.
instances of that, but generally speaking, that was not something that that was not an option for the boy, just to go to an authority figure.
So you went to this compound, you made it to this compound, and you're going to be there for several days. And you originally thought you were going to be working with an orphanage and doing a VBS program. It sounds like that wasn't quite the case, but it sounds like it was still very fulfilling and interesting work. So what happened?
Yeah, so like I said, we kind of had to restructure our planning because of the whole protesting, and we didn't really realize that until they kind of sat us down and said, "Hey, we're gonna have to leave a day short." But essentially, our first day was our free day, so to speak. They took us around, they saw it, they wanted us to see the area in case we had to leave early. And the boys were in school, so there really wasn't even a whole lot we could do.
Right.
The second day was more of our Labor Day.
Okay.
So I had the privilege, and it truly was a privilege, to work with his name was Andres, and he is the male director of the orphanage. There was a husband-wife duo that oversaw and was running the boys' home.
Okay.
And I was able to work with him early in the morning. I mean, we're up at 4:30 in the morning, and we go off to get ceiling tiles for one of the projects that they're working on. They're in the process of building a fellowship hall and a sanctuary.
So is this for the boys' home?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the boys' home was actually a lot bigger than I was expecting. There's multiple buildings here. They have a small cafe area, kitchen area. They have the housing for the boys. They have a place for dentists and doctors who come and visit. They have a computer room that was built for them. That's becoming a new thing over there, is at least in the outskirts, is internet.
Okay.
So they're able to have a media room, a library. So there is an actual compound with multiple buildings there, and
that's brilliant.
Oh, it's great. It was fantastic. And they're building onto it currently as well. So the fellowship hall was one that they were currently working on.
Mm-hmm.
And so Andres and I drive out essentially for 4:00, 5:00 in the morning, out past the city, past everywhere, pretty much in the countryside now. And we're picking up ceiling tiles. So I load up. I was going to say Andres was like, "Do you want to do it?" And I felt like as the guest, I could not slack off.
Right.
I had everything to prove to this guy.
By the way, before we go on, did you guys speak the same language?
Oh, absolutely not. There was only one person in our entire group who could speak Spanish, and she was our translator and guide, who was also the daughter of the director who started the entire boys' home program here in Peru.
That's one of the advantages of going with an organization to do this and not trying to go off and freelance or anything like that. You had an organization, you had someone there from the organization to help you translate. Probably also was the one that helped coordinate whenever the protests were happening to get you guys out, right? Is that true?
Yeah, so
not to interrupt the
no. This is a great point that you make, and it's because even in our mission class and other missionaries that I've spoken with, you never want to be the Lone Ranger out in the mission field. That is a recipe for disaster, both safety wise and spiritually wise. It is such a frowned upon no thing. You want to be a part of some kind of organization. You want to have some kind of support structure. And just guides and people who know what you're doing, who have your back, who can help you out in a situation. And we were with Scripture Union, who helps teach, and their mission focus was on teaching and education.
Okay.
So that was their big focus.
Which then having a fellowship hall, being a part of making that makes good sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you were saying before I interrupted you on that you were traveling with Andreas?
Yes.
You guys were communicating. How were you communicating if it's just you two?
He had Google Translate on his phone, and we would just pass it back and forth to one another. There was 3 of us in the cab of this box truck. There was a driver, Andres, and I, and we were all passing the phone back pretty much to one another, trying to speak, and we were actually, and it was funny just how it was just really connecting with one another through just simple messages there, and that was a really heartwarming and fascinating aspect of being able to connect with people, even with a language barrier.
That's really cool.
And it is doable if anyone is interested in missions and is concerned about not speaking the language. It is quite doable to connect with people beyond just words.
That's really cool. So you got there and you performed your guest duty of loading up a whole bunch of terracotta.
Yes, just clay tiles, nothing fancy.
Mm-hmm.
And all the foolish pride that I had to show him that I was the number one missionary. And we loaded it up, came back. He treated me to soup, ram's head soup, on the way back.
Never had ram's head soup before.
It was really good. I was surprised how well it was.
What would you describe it like?
Fatty.
Fatty.
Okay. So funny story about that. We go to this shop and we walk upstairs and it's a little cafe area and we sit down, we order the soup, and he keeps pointing to me. He goes, polo chicken, and he goes like cabeza,
Yeah.
and then polo and something else. And in my mind, I just assumed it was all chicken because he kept on saying polo, polo, polo. I was like, oh, like cabeza, that's the head. And I knew that was head. I'm like, well, that, and I don't know why I rationalized. I'm like, well, the head must mean darker meat.
Right.
And I was like, and I heard him get cabeza, and I was like, well, when in Rome, you follow the host, right?
Yep.
So I get cabeza, and he looks at me strange, and I look at him strange because he's looking at me strange. And he keeps tapping his head, and I'm like, keep nodding and saying, see. Needless to say, it wasn't chicken. It was a quite literal ram's head in a pot, and you just ate whatever was in there. And I remember getting this frayed lump in my spoon. And the guy across from me, who was our driver, looked at me and started tugging on his ear. And Andres gets out his phone and Google translates and says, well, that's the ear.
How was the ear?
Fatty? I would eat it again. So ironically enough, the broth was delicious. Yep. I would do that all day. Fantastic.
Very
Everything inside, solid 7 out of 10. I would eat it again.
That's really cool.
But it wasn't my favorite meal there. But it was 7. It was the content 7 out of 10. Broth 9 out of 10.
Gotcha.
So
wow, so that was fun. And then you're on your way back with the tiles.
Yep.
When did you get a chance to do anything with those, or did you then start working with the boys that are there?
So how they were doing the project was they had an actual construction crew currently there. Okay. And they had a angel donor who's a part of the community, who's close with the boys' home, was kind of overseeing that, overlooking that. They kind of share the property line.
Okay.
Throughout the entire property, there's just animals wandering. There was 2 sheep, there was a bull, and there was a mule. And you would just go out for a walk on your free time, and you would just see animals just walking down the path, and then you would see a bull tied off to a tree somewhere. And it was all this angel donors. They call him Don Fernando.
Okay.
And he was kind of overseeing it and was kind of the very respected figure in this community.
Gotcha.
And he had a construction crew kind of doing the actual construction of the fellowship hall. We just unloaded the clay tiles for the construction workers. And then shortly after that, we were then making adobe bricks for the fellow construction workers as well, which very rudimentary.
Who's we in this case?
The Presbyterian church that I was going with. There was a group of us, about 8 or 12 of us.
Okay, so you got to have this unique opportunity to go off with the coordinator of the place, and then you've come back and now you're working with the group. Okay. So making adobe bricks. I've never made an adobe brick in my life. What's it like?
Rather a lot more straightforward than you would have thought. So they just cut up a bunch of hay, straw, pile it together. We are shoveling dirt, mud, sand, whatever this was, a mixture of all. And we're watering it and we're clumping together. And it's kind of like a wine press where we're stomping it, and we take our shoes off and we're stomping in this mud now to get it all mixed together. And they have these wooden molds, and you just pile on this mud, hay, straw mix in this mold, and it's about a foot by foot. It's a rectangle, pretty much, a
Okay.
rectangular mold, and we just dig it, and then you plop it out, and you move it over, and you work on that.
And start again.
Yeah,
And then do you bake them?
you let the
Or
sun cure them,
okay.
and that's why it's important not to mess with them too much. And throughout this entire process, there were the church group that I was a part of, the Glenwood Presbytery group,
Mm-hmm.
and then there were also they had the boys come out, and so like whatever work we did, the boys were a part of.
Oh, that's really cool.
So the boys would come out and help, and this was how I really connected with the group and with the boys and with the directors in this way. Was I was kind of at a loss for how do I connect with people. Like
Right.
I don't speak the language, I don't know the customs, I don't know anything. So I kind of start seeing what this kid was doing. His name was Fernando. See what he was doing, and him and I started working together. And I would kind of just start taking his mud and putting it on my mud pile, or putting my mud and putting it on top of his hands when he's working. And we just started messing with each other. And we just started. Eventually, we just turned out into play. And I would grit the mud and I would smear it all over my face. And everyone, the workers were at a loss of words for that. Fernando's laughing. Alfredo's laughing. The adults are freaking out for whatever reason.
This is not how you do missions work. You make bricks and then you move them to little piles. You don't interact with people at all.
I don't think it was. They were fine with that. It was when I started getting the mud water that we're rinsing it out with, and I started doing that and started trying to wipe my face off with the mud water as a joke with Fernando. Because his whole thing he would like to do was trying to get the mud water and get it like close to your face, so you would like, oh, and I just got it out of his hands and started smearing the mud all over.
Kind of war paint on your face.
Yeah, and that was fun. And then after that, Fernando and I were buds the entire time, and we would play soccer and mess with each other and have fun and play during dinner, too much of everyone's detriment, throwing food and napkins across the hall to one another.
Very cool. It sounds like that was a really a good icebreaker moment there. Doing something constructive together for one cause.
Yes, and I think, and I share that story just to, even in a practical sense of here at home, and it just takes a willingness to. It could just be something as simple as playing. I think we often overthink, overcomplicate things. I gotta know all the right words. I gotta know all the right things. I have to have all the Bible memorized to be this like super duper awesome Christian. And it could just take as much as playing with someone or having dinner. It can be such a simple task just to build a relationship. And especially in mission works and in Christian life, I think we have a tendency to overcomplicate things.
And Jesus, at some point, and I don't remember when, I'm bad at that sort of thing, when he's sending his disciples off the first time, one of the first times, he says, don't worry about what you're going to say. Don't worry about what you're going to do. Just go. And when it's time to say something, I'll help you with the words. Right? Sort of a God and Moses kind of thing, right? And we forget that. We think everything is on us all the time to do everything exactly perfect. So you got this chance to work with them building up the bricks. Then what other things did you work on?
So that day was quite eventful. And then at that point, then we had lunch, and then we had a little bit of downtime. Just spent it resting and reading, and then afterwards we were helping clearing out a walkway of stone and building the stone wall. So they had this old school stone wall at the edge of their barrier that they were building. So we would, for at least hour and a half, we're out in this field collecting stones and rocks and piling them onto this stone wall.
Okay.
And we did that for, like I said, hour and a half. And then, funny enough, we finished that, and then we collect more rocks later on. But that was they were going to do a grill barbecue pit thing where they got a bunch of rocks and stones, and they made this dome architecture thing. I don't know how else to describe it. It was super fascinating, but they built this oven essentially out of the rocks in the area, and that was going to be our lunch for the next day. So we helped participate in that. They wanted to treat us to like a traditional meal. So they got eucalyptus trees, and they would put the sweet potatoes and the potatoes and the meats and all these eucalyptus trees and kind of slow cook it, and you just put it in this stone oven figure, pile a bunch of blankets on it, then pile a bunch of dirt on it, and then you just let that cook. Yeah.
That sounds like quite an experience as well.
Yes, that was fascinating. And then that kind of concluded our first day. And our second day was more of interacting with the kids. And that wasn't necessarily labor work, but it was, we took the kids to the market, playing with them. We bought them things and just trying to spend time with them. That was really one of our main times, is making sure that we spend time with them and love on them.
Right.
And that's what we pretty much did all of Sunday. And that was special because then we went and we left the compound and went into the plaza area of this area. And we got to see more of what life was like in the surrounding area. And it was like a meat market, produce goods. I mean, you name it, they had it. Clothes, fabric, toys, anything you can want. And to kind of give a more broader picture of what the area was like mission-wise, we walked across this booth that was, I guess, a spiritualist booth. They were selling a bunch of herbs, spell books, grimoires, things of that nature.
Gotcha. So not a very strong Christian presence in the area?
It's hit or miss. In this area, not so much.
Gotcha. I mean, obviously the boys' home.
Yeah.
The foothold there, but
that's about the only in that area. And there's like a Catholic church in the area too, but it's not there's not a lot of prevalent Christian influence there. There's still a lot of spiritualism, animism, and if you don't know what animism is, that is praying to the spirits of the ground, the spirits of nature, the mountain, the spirit mountain, things of that nature. You're praying to deities that reside in nature.
Okay.
And that's still alive and well in the countryside.
Okay. So you got a chance to hang out with the kids. Anything memorable from hanging out with the kids during that time?
Yes, trying to play soccer at like 15,000 feet really sucks. And having a little 10-year-old running around up and down kicking your butt is really encouraging. No, that was by all means a struggle. Just running down the field and back made you feel like you were going to wind out and have a heart attack. But again, just playing with the kids and just how they are just, and this is going to sound so bizarre, but they were just the most ordinary kids. You would have never known what these kids have gone through. These kids have probably lived more of a life than most adults have had here in America and ever will. Had to have had what they experienced. One of the kids, Fernando, my little bud, the entire time, when they were telling me when he first arrived at the boys' home, he had a real bad habit of throwing rocks at people. Okay. That was a real serious problem of him just hurtling rocks, and not fun rocks. Like I don't know if there's ever a fun rock throwing, but there was quite a malicious intent with this rock throw. But you would have never guessed that with
based on how he
is now. And that was such in my own life, that kind of just really showed me just what the power of saying yes to God looks like. And I mean, you see the kids who are being healed and transformed, and the adults too, and how these, and again, not all kids through this program get 100% rehabilitated, but there was an overwhelmingly amount that do. And speaking with the daughter and our translator, who's the daughter of a director, and we had an opportunity to speak with the director as well, just what the lives change and these people become healed through Christ, through these experiences that they've had, and they're able to raise families of their own and are healed, and they don't harbor this resentment that, for all intents and purposes, they have all right to.
Right.
And they have been able to heal through Christ. And I think that was my biggest takeaway in this trip, was seeing what yes means to God, and not just with the kids, but also the director who said yes to a need in the area, who saw a need for these kids to need the love of Christ, and was able to say yes to that.
It's brilliant. Without him, this wouldn't work, but without people like you as well coming in to contribute, it doesn't work. And we can do all things through Christ, but Christ can do all things through us, right?
And all it takes is a yes.
All it takes, exactly. And sometimes that's hard.
It is. I don't want to try and downplay that, and I know that can be a life-changing, real soul-rattling decision, but that really life does change with just a yes. And that was so prevalent with these kids and interacting with them. And all we did was play Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we were food fighting, throwing napkins at each other, and during breakfast and lunch, we would do that. Before the market, we were playing tag. I would race them up and down the walkways. We got to the market, we bought them the soda and all of that. Just the entire day was just with kids. Then we were able to play soccer, and
you could just see the power of having a relationship with someone who cares about them, to change them, to see the love of God reflected through you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a powerful thing to be a part of, and it sounds like it had a powerful influence on you.
Oh, for sure, that was one of the best weeks I've had. Years. That was definitely a top 3, if not number uno so far,
right,
in my life. There's definitely more to come, but in the 26 years I've graced this earth, that has top billet for myself of just how truly amazing all of that was.
So it sounds like you definitely had a strong confirmation of mission work being something that you would like to pursue.
Yes, that was definitely the name of the game, and just that word got tossed around so much. And even the directors are saying, her and I, Charo, the female, the wife, her and I had a conversation with the translator, of course, and was speaking, and how we were sitting at dinner time, and she was telling that her and I had the same heart, and she was a mission worker, and she says, "You're connecting so well here because you and I have the same heart. You have the same heart for missions." And that was a really special moment, and was able to confirm just tons and tons of confirmation. And again, we kind of ended our day Sunday, going into Monday was our VBS day.
Okay.
We originally planned 2 days of VBS. Circumstances allowed us to only do one, but I'm grateful we were even able to do that one.
And VBS was a success for you?
Yes, that was a long. So I said that playing with Fernando doing soccer was exhausting. There was this girl and I that were in charge of games for the VBS time, and we were going to do games pretty much from 8 to 12.
Okay.
And we were going to be, that was us. We didn't have the translator with us. We didn't have our guide with us. It was just going to be her, I, and 20 plus kids at a time. And these are kids that are not just in the boys' home that they were there, but this is also the surrounding community. They had
much like our VBSs that we have.
Exactly. And this was able to try and pull into the community, the schools, things like that. So we had tons of kids from all different walks of life. And and I didn't even realize about this until later on, but there were some serious things going on with these kids' lives as well. And I don't want to get too much into it on this podcast, but there is some very much
very
traumatic things that are ongoing.
Right.
And that was not even something that I didn't even was aware of until after the kids left and heard about it at a dinner talk later that time, of just some of the things that these kids are currently going through. And
So having a place like a VBS to go to see some fun, to see, to hear a little bit about God, to see people care about them.
it made it just I'll say the ministry of presence. That's a word that gets tossed around a lot, and I really stand by that. It's just being there, being present, and willing to say yes goes all the distance. And you just have to just be there. I mean, like I said, we overcomplicate things thinking that it's all on us to do the work, where it's really not. It's the Holy Spirit in us, moving hearts that we are interacting with that do that. I mean, that's no more present than having, I said, we're doing the VBS with the kids, and they're just so fascinated with everything. They want to know all the American words, and they're trying to, we're like, como so dice, like, how do you say this? How do you say that? And they keep on, and like, in very broken, they're like, Alaska, and trying to, like, I'm not from Alaska, I'm from Florida. And they're like, oh, California? I was like, Florida. And we just this interaction with just very simple phrases that you're able to pick up with, and just the smiles, and you smiling back, and you joking and them joking. And it just was such a true form of connection. You can just really feel the Holy Spirit moving in a way that there's no other way to describe it. It was just this Holy Spirit moving, just of pure joy, essentially.
That sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. It sounds like you definitely had your confirmation, and it just continued to just hammer home. Do you have a plan of going on another one?
At the present moment, no. I'm going to do my best to start saving up money for that next one. I've made a few connections since I've been back, a few local mission agencies, but nothing concrete yet. I have a few things on the burner, so to speak, and a few opportunities, but nothing concrete like July 6th, I'm leaving for blah, 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 blah. No, nothing yet. But I said as much as I can, as soon as I can, I would love to do another one. That's definitely after I graduate, something I am dead set on doing. Wherever that be, I do not know, but somewhere.
Okay. Well, the confirmation is there. You know routes now. You've got some connections. Before we leave it, was there any? Would you like to talk about the last day that I think we hit VBS day? Was there another day after that?
Yes, we came back. I said a day early because of the whole protesting, and it's ironic and fortunate at the same time that we did leave a day early, because the ironic part is the Capitol really had little to no protesting. There was some light protesting, really wasn't a whole lot affected. The ironic part is that where we were at, roads were most definitely blocked off. The countryside saw a lot more activity than the Capitol did.
Gotcha.
So it's one of those ironic senses that you would imagine, like, we're just 30 minutes away from the Capitol building. Like, we were next to the Peruvian White House, essentially, and little to no problem. Also, funny thing about that is that their Capitol building and congressional buildings are in the heart of downtown. So imagine White House being Athens Theater, and that's pretty much what that was like. That was a really surreal experience. We're walking, and they're like, "There's the Capitol building." We're like, "I can just reach out and touch that right now. Like, that's the Capitol." That's a real experience. But
yeah.
The last day was we come back, we get rest, and they kind of show us around more of the Capitol that we didn't see before.
All right.
And it was, again, just another one of those weird, you can't anticipate it. Just had an extra rest day, extra day to see things and just enjoy the time that you had there and see other parts of life.
And also to process what you experienced as well before you came back to your normal life, right?
Correct.
see. What was the lowest point on the trip for you?
Lowest point of the trip was leaving. That was probably one of the hardest things I've had to do
Sounds like you
also
really.
in years. That was a painstaking. I almost cried leaving. Fernando at the time avoided. He couldn't even be. He was trying to hide.
Hmm.
He didn't want to see us leave, and he then. I don't blame him. I was having a time with myself, and they found him and brought him out. He eventually did come with us to the bus depot where we were going to catch our bus and leave. But it was a very
Sounds like you
hard experience for all of us.
made very strong relationships with the boys there.
Yeah, with the kids, and I mean, Andres and I also became bros. I mean, anytime there was anything to ever do around the compound, he would find me. He would wave me on to follow me, and I was like, "Oh, well, here we go. This is it. This is what I was born to do. This is it. Number uno missionary. Let's go." And someone else would kind of come by, and he would stop them, and then look at me, and then urge me. And I was like, "I'm number one. I'm a favorite." And
Can totally live with this.
I'm fine with this. Yeah, and we would just mess with each other. And it's such a weird thing where guys are guys no matter where they are
Yes.
in the world. Like I remember laying down, and Andres, the male director, would come by and yank leg hair out as he's walking by,
Yep.
and just doing guy things. And it was like I said, the whole experience was just a 1 in a million life changing experience.
That is, I'm happy to hear it from you, and you can definitely see when you talk about it, just it's a strong connection in your heart to what you want to do. If anybody out here is interested in doing mission work, do you know of any people to connect to or to contact?
Of course. I wouldn't say I have specific contact at this present moment. I mean, I had lunch with a missionary recently that I could put you in contact with. I know Mark also has people, and there is rumored. I don't want to speak too closely on it. Rumored to be another trip sometime next year in the pipeline. Don't hold me to that. That is just a rumor I heard. And if I say the rumor enough, there's enough pressure for it to come true.
There we go. And so they could reach out to Mark through the church to find any connections that are out there, what's happening.
Local wise, yes. And if you really just want to do a mission work, there are numerous agencies, oodles and oodles of agencies that you can go through that all you have to do is contact them. I'm interested in X, Y, Z, and they will get you connected. And that's the great thing about agencies is that you just need to raise the money, and they kind of help you they facilitate the rest as long as you have the passport, medical waivers, you have the money to pay for it and help support. I mean, there's Crew, YWAM. They have all these different, I mean, you can also just Google organizations, and I would definitely do some research before you just throw a dart at the board and be like, that's the one I'm going to.
I'll put a couple of links in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
For anybody who's interested, I'll grab a couple of websites from you on that. What was the highest point of your trip? Let's close with that.
Highest point. Oh man. I'm thinking. There's the whole experience was it. Sunday, I would really say Sunday, or I would probably say breaking the ice and making that connection with the Adobe bricks, smearing mud all over myself, just being a silly, goofy person, and just being childlike in that sense. Was it, and just knowing there was that. Like I was like at that moment, I knew I was in. I got my foot in the door, and that very second, I knew I'm like, that's it. This is it. We're good to go from here on out. And that really was the turning point at least Saturday, and that was still early on Saturday. That was like noontime, shortly afterwards.
So just after you'd gotten the roofing tiles
Yeah.
over, the confirmation came pretty quickly for you there.
Yeah.
That sounds brilliant. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
Anything? I think everyone should do missions. I mean, I'm a little biased in that, but I kind of bringing it full circle with the earlier conversations. I do think as Christians, we are to be mission focused, mission minded to any extent. And I don't even mean going halfway across the world to Nepal. I mean, even DeLand, there's a need for the missions. I mean, missions can be as gigantic and as small as you need it to be in your workplace, in your local community, and even in this church. I mean, missions doesn't have to be this super crazy, I'm packing a bag, leaving for, like I said, Nepal, whatever, Peru. It can be as simple as, oh, I'm going to go volunteer at the bridge, or I'm going to go help here at church. I'm going to go make an intention to make this connection at my workplace. I need to share the gospel with someone. I need to make a connection with someone. I need to be someone's friend. And that's the heart of missions. And I think that is what we are called to do. And I don't think we should overcomplicate it. Again, I love abroad missions. I love my time in Peru, and I cannot wait to get back out in there. But there's also so much work to be done where we're placed at and where God has us right now in this very spot.
As you say that, it reminds me of, I think it was St. Augustine who said that to constantly preach the gospel, when necessary, use words.
No, okay, I'm going to nerd out here.
Good. I knew you'd catch me if I got it wrong.
Even though I love Augustine, and we can have an entirely different podcast just about the saints. Saint Francis of Assisi, that was it. Always preach the gospel, and when necessary, use words.
Right.
Yes, that was Saint Francis of Assisi.
Which,
it's a great quote.
Loosely translated is, do the things in the community and in the world as Jesus would have you do. And that speaks as much, if not more, than any word given.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Will. This has been a pleasure.
Always.
And we'll see you next time.